Rain crashed against the marble headstone, drumming like a heartbeat that refused to die. Ethan Cole stood there, drenched in his tailored black coat, staring at the name carved in white stone, Clara Cole, beloved wife. 1987-2020. His reflection rippled across the wet marble, distorted and hollow. 5 years had passed, but the ache inside him felt heavier than the day he buried her. He knelt slowly, his knees sinking into the mud. A bouquet of lilies trembled in his hand. "You always hated rain," he murmured, voice hoarse. "But it never misses your day." The cemetery stretched in silence around him, broken only by the storm's howl. Lightning flashed, revealing rows of graves like pale ghosts. Ethan didn't flinch. He was used to storms, inside and out. In his mind, Clara's laughter still echoed. The way she'd tease him for working too late. The way her touch could calm his temper in seconds. But after her death, the warmth had turned to steel. He built empires, crushed rivals, and signed deals that made him richer than entire nations. Yet none of it could buy sleep or forgiveness. The caretaker, an old man with a worn cap, watched from the gate, careful not to intrude. Everyone in the city knew Ethan Cole, the man who had everything except peace. Ethan brushed his fingers over the cold marble. "You were my only light," he whispered. The words hung in the air, swallowed by rain. He rose, pulling his coat tight. The world blurred in shades of gray as he turned to leave. But then, a sound, soft, high-pitched, a giggle. He froze. For a second, he thought it was the wind playing tricks. Then another giggle, clearer, closer, drifted from behind the nearby graves. Ethan's heart lurched. No one should be here in this storm. He scanned the rows, squinting through the rain. "Who's there?" His voice echoed sharply. Silence. Then a small cough. He stepped closer, shoes sinking in mud. Behind a cracked angel statue, movement. Tiny shadows, two of them, pressed together. Ethan crouched, trying to see through the darkness. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You don't need to hide." A flash of lightning lit their faces for a heartbeat. Two little girls, barefoot, shivering. Their dresses were soaked and torn. Mud streaked their cheeks, but their eyes, those eyes, stared at him with haunting familiarity. They didn't speak. They just watched him, trembling, as if they'd been waiting for him all along. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The storm roared again, drowning his thoughts, but something inside him stirred for the first time in years. A spark he thought had died with. Clara. He took a hesitant step forward. Smaller girl clutched the other's hand tighter. "Under the thunder's echo," he heard her whisper, barely audible. "Mom said you'd come." Ethan froze where he stood. The two little girls, no older than 8, clung to each other as if the world would swallow them if they let go. Their voices trembled through the rain. "This is our mama's place, too," one whispered. The words hit him like a thunderclap. "Our mama's place?" His pulse quickened. The wind howled through the graves as he crouched down, his gaze fixed on them. "Who's your mother?" he asked, trying to steady his voice. The taller one blinked up at him, rain dripping from her lashes. "She used to come here, before she went to heaven." For a moment, the world tilted. The storm, the cemetery, even the sound of his own breathing, all faded into the background. He looked closer at the girls, soaked hair clinging to their faces, tiny feet covered in mud, and lips trembling from cold. "Where do you live?" he asked softly. They hesitated. "Nowhere," the smaller one said. "Sometimes under that tree." She pointed to a gnarled oak at the edge of the cemetery, its roots tangled like claws. Ethan followed their gaze. Beneath the tree sat a ragged blanket, a tin can, and a few crumbs of bread. Enough to tell a story no child should live. The caretaker appeared behind him, holding his hat against the wind. "Sir, those two have been hanging around for weeks," he said. "No family. Won't tell anybody where they came from." Ethan turned sharply. "And no one helped them?" The old man shrugged, guilt flickering in his eyes. "They vanish whenever we try." "Said they're waiting for their mama." Ethan knelt again, the rain soaking through his trousers. "Do you know your mama's name?" he asked. The taller girl dug into her small satchel and pulled out a wrinkled photograph. "This is her." He took it carefully and felt his chest tighten. The photo showed a younger Clara, smiling, her arms around a baby swaddled in a white blanket. The edges of the picture were torn, but the truth was clear enough to make his hands tremble. His mind raced. It can't be. It's impossible. Clara had never mentioned children. She couldn't have. Ethan's throat burned. "Where did you get this?" The little one's eyes shone with tears. "She gave it to us. Said if we ever got lost, we'd find her here." A flash of lightning cracked above them, splitting the sky. Ethan's breath came in shallow bursts. Every logical thought told him this was coincidence, a cruel trick of fate. Yet something inside him, a quiet, buried instinct, whispered that it wasn't. He stood, heart pounding, and turned away, his voice breaking. "Stay here. I'll send help." He walked toward his car through the downpour, trying to escape the image of Clara's smile in that faded photograph. But as he started the engine and glanced into the rearview mirror, the twins were still there, soaked, trembling, calling out through the storm, "Daddy, don't leave again!" Sleep refused to come. Ethan lay in the dark, the rain still whispering against the windows of his mansion. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces, muddy, fragile, trembling, and heard the echo that refused to fade. "Daddy, don't leave again." He sat up abruptly, sweat cold on his skin. His reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Hollow eyes, restless guilt. "Who are they?" he muttered. "And why? Do they look like her?" By morning, he had his assistant on the phone. "Find out everything you can about two homeless twin girls near St. Clair Cemetery," he ordered, voice tight. "No, I don't care what it costs. I need answers." As he waited, memories from 5 years ago returned like ghosts. Before the accident, Clara had changed. Gentler, distracted, always stepping out for what she called charity visits. He'd been too consumed by his empire to ask where she went. Now every unanswered question tore open old wounds. He replayed their last argument, her pleading for his time, his cold refusal. "You're too busy chasing what doesn't matter," she'd said. He'd walked out that night. The next morning, she was gone forever. The assistant called back hours later, voice uneasy. "Sir, there's no record. No birth certificates, no reports, no school entries. As if those girls don't exist." Ethan's heart sank. "Check orphanages, shelters, anything." He drove to the nearest orphanage himself. Rows of children played under flickering lights, their laughter cutting through his thoughts. The headmistress frowned when he showed her the photo. "I've never seen them," she said softly. "But children like that, they slip through the cracks all the time." He left with a knot in his chest, the sound of rain following him again as dusk fell. By the time he reached the cemetery, the air was thick with mist. The caretaker stood at the gate, shaking his head. "They're gone, sir. Disappeared this morning. Just left their blanket." Ethan's eyes swept the graveyard. The oak tree stood empty, its roots glistening with rainwater. He stepped closer, and his shoe struck something small buried in the mud. He crouched, brushing the dirt away. A silver locket lay half-buried, its chain broken. When he wiped it clean, the engraving made his chest tighten. C&E, Clara and Ethan. Their old monogram. His breath caught. No, it can't be. Hands trembling, he opened the locket. Inside, behind the cracked glass, was a tiny photograph. Clara's face glowing with joy. 2 newborns nestled in her arms. The ground seemed to tilt beneath him. The storm, the whispers, the girl's eyes. It all collided into one unbearable truth. For the first time in years, Ethan's knees buckled. The sound of rain faded under the pounding in his chest as the impossible thought formed. What if Clara never told him that he was a father? Ethan's car screeched to a stop outside the old brick hospital where Clara had once been treated. The locket in his pocket felt like a burning coal, its secret demanding truth. He stormed through the quiet corridors until he reached a door marked Dr. Harris. Obstetrics. The doctor looked up, startled, as Ethan entered without knocking. His voice cut through the air like broken glass. "Tell me what happened to my wife." "All of it." Dr. Harris straightened slowly, his lined face tightening. "Mr. Cole, I've told you everything before. Don't lie to me." Ethan slammed the locket on the desk. "Then explain this." "Explain them!" The older man stared at the photograph inside, color draining from his face. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Dr. Harris sighed and lowered his gaze. "Clara made me promise to keep her confidence. She was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you couldn't bear it." Ethan froze, the words slicing deeper than any knife. The doctor continued, voice trembling with guilt. "Clara gave birth to twin girls, premature, fragile. She feared losing them like—" "The first one," Ethan blinked. "The first one?" Dr. Harris nodded sadly. "You remember the miscarriage 2 years before she died? It nearly broke you. She thought if you knew she'd gone into labor early, you'd fall apart again. She wanted to tell you once they were strong enough to survive." Ethan's knees weakened, but she never got the chance. Dr. Harris nodded again, eyes dim with regret. "The accident happened that same day. There was chaos in the hospital afterward. Files misplaced, patients transferred, infants moved between wards. The twins disappeared in the confusion. I searched, but by the time I realized what had happened, it was too late." The room spun around Ethan. His pulse thundered in his ears. "You're telling me I had daughters? My wife died alone trying to protect me from the truth. And my children were lost because no one cared enough to look?" The doctor's voice broke. "Clara loved you more than her own life. She thought she was saving you from another heartbreak." Ethan turned toward the window, gripping the sill until his knuckles whitened. The city lights below blurred through his tears. Everything he'd built, his power, his empire, his pride, suddenly felt like ashes. He whispered, "I thought I buried my heart with her, but it was out there." "Alive!" Dr. Harris stepped forward. "Ethan, maybe it's not too late. If those girls survived, someone must know." Ethan wiped his face, jaw tightening with resolve. "Then I'll find them, even if it costs me everything." As he strode out into the rain, his phone buzzed. His assistant's voice came through, strained and fearful. "Sir, you need to hear this. The twins, they were taken by someone tonight." Ethan stopped dead, the sound of thunder echoing in the distance. "Taken?" "Yes, sir. They're gone." The line went dead, leaving Ethan standing alone in the storm, the weight of fate crashing down once again. Ethan tore through the city's wet streets, headlights slicing through the fog like desperate prayers. Every second counted. Somewhere in the maze of alleys, his daughters, the children he never knew existed, were slipping further from him. He slammed the car door shut and sprinted across the dark alley, his shoes splashing through puddles. His assistant's last words still echoed in his mind. "A woman took them. Claims she's their aunt. But there was no aunt. There was only a predator." He cornered a police officer near the precinct gate, breath ragged. 2 girls, 8 years old, twins, taken near St. Clair Cemetery. "I have witnesses. I have money. Just do something." The officer's bored eyes flicked toward him. "Sir, we'll file a report, but without proof of abduction," Ethan's voice cracked. "They're children. What more proof do you need?" "Please, Mr. Cole. We're handling other cases." He didn't let him finish. Ethan turned away, fury and helplessness choking him. His wealth, his status, his power, none of it mattered now. The system didn't move for men with broken hearts. Hours later, he sat in his car, parked under a flickering streetlight, his hands trembling around the steering wheel. For the first time in years, he prayed, "Clara, if you can hear me, help me find them." A tap on the window made him jump. A scrawny boy stood there, no older than 10, his eyes darting nervously. "You looking for 2 girls?" he whispered. Ethan rolled down the window instantly. "You've seen them?" The boy nodded. "They was with a lady, real mean one. Calls herself Aunt May. Takes kids to the docks sometimes. Or that old warehouse on Mercer Street." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Show me." They sped through the sleeping city, the boy pointing the way. The air grew colder, the streets narrower. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again. When they reached the edge of the industrial district, the boy stopped. That's it. An abandoned warehouse loomed ahead, its windows shattered, a faint light flickering inside. Ethan's chest tightened. "Stay here," he said, pressing a wad of bills into the boy's hand. "If I'm not back in 15 minutes, call the police." The boy nodded, fear flickering in his eyes. Ethan crept toward the warehouse, the sound of rain masking his footsteps. Through a crack in the door, he saw movement. Silhouettes, one adult, 2 small figures bound together. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He pushed the door open, stepping into the dim, musty air. The smell of rot and gasoline hit him at once. A single hanging bulb swung overhead, revealing a figure, a woman with sharp eyes and a knife in her hand. And behind her, the twins, terrified, trembling, whispering to each other. Ethan's voice broke through the silence, low and shaking. "Let them go," the woman smirked. "You're too late." Before he could move, a scream tore through the darkness, small, desperate, and filled with terror. "Daddy, help!" Rain hammered the warehouse roof like war drums as Ethan stepped forward, his breath sharp and unsteady. The woman's knife gleamed in the dim light. Shadows moved behind her. 2 erupted, metal burned, metal men, rough and silent, closing in like wolves. He raised his hands slightly, his voice hoarse but steady. "I don't want trouble. I just want my daughters," the woman laughed, low and cruel. "Daughters? You mean assets? They're worth more than you think." Ethan's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But one look at the twins, huddled together, crying quietly, burned that thought away. He took a step closer. "You touch them again, and I'll bury you right here." Her smirk faltered. Then, without warning, one of the men lunged. Ethan dodged, adrenaline flooding his veins. A struggle erupted, metal burned, metal rearranged, fists struck, and the bulb overhead swayed wildly, throwing chaos across the room. A punch caught his jaw. Another slammed into his ribs. Pain seared through him, but he didn't stop. He grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor and swung. The man dropped. The knife flashed. The woman charged, slicing through his sleeve, grazing his arm. Ethan caught her wrist, twisting hard. The weapon clattered away. He shoved her back, breathing raggedly. "Run!" he shouted to the girls. They darted toward him just as the warehouse door burst open, red and blue lights slicing through the dark. Sirens wailed. Officers poured in, weapons drawn. "Hands up! Drop everything!" The traffickers froze. The woman's eyes darted toward a side exit. Before anyone could stop her, she bolted into the night. Ethan didn't chase. He collapsed to his knees, blood dripping from his arm, holding the twins close. Their small hands clung to his shirt, trembling. "You came back," one whispered, voice shaking. He swallowed hard, pulling them closer. "I'll never leave you again." Outside, paramedics rushed forward, sirens still echoing in the distance. The boy who had guided him here stood near a police car, watching silently as officers loaded the twins into an ambulance. Ethan managed a faint, grateful nod. Hours later, The chaos settled into quiet hospital corridors. Ethan sat on a gurney, his arm bandaged, exhaustion washing over him. The twins slept beside him, curled together like they had in that cold cemetery. Except now, they were safe. He brushed a strand of hair from one girl's forehead, her tiny hand gripping his finger even in sleep. The door opened softly. A nurse stepped in. "They'll be fine. You should rest, Mr. Cole." He nodded weakly, finally sinking back into the pillow. Just before he drifted off, he felt a tug on his sleeve. One of the girls stirred, eyes half open. "Mom said you'd find us when you were ready," she whispered. Ethan froze. His heart clenched. Tears welled up for the first time in years. He whispered into the quiet, voice breaking, "I'm ready now." Ethan sat in the quiet hospital room long after dawn. The world outside washed in pale gold. The twins slept soundly beside him, their small breaths rising and falling in rhythm. But his mind refused rest. "Mom said you'd find us when you were ready." The words haunted him like a melody from another life. How could Clara have known? Back home, Ethan unlocked the room he hadn't entered in years. Clara's old study. Dust blanketed her desk, her perfume long faded, yet the air still carried her warmth. He opened drawer after drawer, searching for answers until his hand brushed a small wooden box tucked beneath her journals. Inside lay her diary, wrapped in a silk scarf, and an envelope marked in Clara's familiar handwriting. For Ethan, when love leads you back. His fingers trembled as he unfolded the letter. "My dearest Ethan," it began, "if you're reading this, then love has done what I prayed it would. I couldn't tell you about the twins, not after our loss. I saw how it broke you, how every smile became a mask. I wanted to protect you from more pain, even if it meant carrying mine alone. But if love is real, it will guide you back to them, when you're ready to be whole again." The words blurred as tears spilled freely down his face. He pressed the letter to his chest, choking on a sob. Clara hadn't betrayed him. She had believed in him. She had known that one day he'd find his way home. Ethan sank to the floor, grief and peace flooding him all at once. "You were right, Clara," he whispered into the silence. "Love did bring me back." Later that evening, Ethan drove through the rain-washed streets with the twins beside him, their laughter soft and bright. They clutched little bouquets of daisies, Clara's favorite. At the cemetery, the sky blushed with sunset. Ethan knelt at Clara's grave, the twins standing close on either side. He placed the flowers down gently, the letter tucked beneath them. "You kept your promise," he murmured. "Now it's my turn." For a moment, no one spoke. The wind stirred the leaves, carrying the faint scent of lilies. One of the girls looked up at him, her eyes wide and calm. "Now we're all together," she said softly. Ethan felt something shift inside him, the years of coldness melting into warmth. He smiled through his tears, wrapping his arms around them both. "Yes," he whispered, voice breaking with love and relief. "Now we are." Above them, the clouds parted, sunlight spilling across the gravestone, as if Clara herself was smiling down, her promise finally fulfilled. Morning sunlight poured through the trees, scattering gold across the marble stones. Ethan knelt beside Clara's grave, but this time he wasn't alone. The twins stood quietly beside him, each holding a small bouquet of daisies. Their laughter carried softly through the still air, filling the place that had once echoed with silence. He brushed a hand over Clara's name, his voice steady yet full of emotion. "You were right," he whispered. "Love did lead me back. You gave me a second chance. Through them." The twins knelt and placed their flowers beside his. One of them tilted her head, smiling up at him. "Mama would like these, don't you think?" Ethan's throat tightened. "She would love them," he said, his voice trembling with warmth. The cemetery's caretaker stood at a distance, the same man who had once watched a broken billionaire grieve in silence. Now he saw something different. A father reborn, surrounded by life. He smiled faintly, tipping his hat before walking away. Weeks later, Ethan stood in front of a gleaming new building. The sign above read, "The Clara Hope Foundation, for every child without a home." Reporters clicked cameras, children ran across the courtyard, and the twins waved from the steps, their eyes bright with excitement. "This isn't just for Clara," Ethan said to the crowd, emotion thick in his voice. "It's for every soul who's lost their light, and still dares to find it again." Applause rose around him, but Ethan only looked at the sky, the same blue Clara once loved, and smiled. Months passed. The twins started school, their backpacks bouncing as they ran toward the gates, laughing. Ethan waited near the car, watching them disappear into the crowd. Pride swelled in his chest. Not the hollow pride of wealth, but the quiet, sacred pride of love regained. The caretaker appeared again, passing by with his tools. "Beautiful day, Mr. Cole," he said. Ethan nodded, eyes soft. "It is. For the first time in years. It really is." As he looked toward the sunlight filtering through the trees, he thought of Clara, of her courage, her love, and her belief that someday he would heal. And he had. His world, once gray and empty, now shimmered with color, not because the pain had vanished, but because love had transformed it into something greater. He whispered to the wind, knowing she could somehow hear him, "We did it, Clara." The lights back. The breeze stirred gently, carrying a warmth that felt almost like her touch. And in that moment, Ethan finally understood. Sometimes life takes everything from you, only to return it in a form purer than you ever imagined. He turned to the camera of the heartbroken world and spoke softly, almost like a prayer. "Share this story to remind someone that love never truly dies. It just finds its way back."